Shortly before 11 p.m. on October the 24th of 2023, Cristobal Santana was pulled over by Illinois State Trooper Dakota Cody Chapman Green in Springfield. 2 days prior, on October the 22nd, Santana was suspected to have gunned down his ex-girlfriend, 37-year-old special needs teacher Adriana Lopez in Chicago. The traffic stop with Chapman Green was recorded on the officer's dashcam. He sat near the passenger side of Santana's vehicle, and the latter was seen slowly emerging from the driver's side while seemingly trying to conceal the fact that he was carrying a pistol. The trooper spotted the weapon and attempted to retreat, but wasn't able to gain much distance when Santana opened fire on him. The trooper returned fire, and Santana briefly ducked behind his car before he discharged several more shots, in spite of having been hit multiple times. Chapman Green then chased after Santana to a nearby parking lot. The suspect had fired at the trooper at least 10 times and exhausted his ammo. They fought, and he proceeded to beat the wounded trooper with his pistol, inflicting a brain bleed as well as fractures to his head and face. Santana returned to his vehicle and sped off, while Chapman Green received assistance from 2 residents prior to being rushed to an emergency room. His heroic intervention would prove vital towards the authorities' efforts to track down and arrest Santana. The latter was located a few hours after the shooting. Dashcam footage would show one of Chapman Green's colleagues slamming their cruiser into Santana, which sent him flying into the street. The man was taken to a local hospital and then arrested for 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated battery to a police officer, and aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. He hadn't been officially charged with Lopez's murder at the time, but was considered a prime suspect as the woman had previously sought a restraining order against him. Updates from early November of 2023 indicated that Santana had waived a preliminary hearing and entered a plea of not guilty for the attack on the trooper. In the incident's wake, Chapman Green was pictured from his hospital bed, unconscious, with his trooper hat on the bed frame, below a poster made by children from a local elementary school that read, "You're our hero." He subsequently began his recovery, the early stages of which were described as miraculous by his doctors. Number 6. Martin Willis. At around 6 a.m. on December the 1st of 2017, van driver Thomas Dulson lost control of his vehicle at junction 44 on the A1 motorway near Leeds, England. 25-year-old Dulson crashed through the barrier, and his overturned Iveco van was left precariously dangling above the A64. PC Martin Willis, known as Motorway Martin to his colleagues, was the first at the scene. He noticed the van swaying with every passing vehicle. Willis thus signaled his colleagues to close the road before grabbing the rear axle with his bare hands in an attempt to balance the van and prevent it from going over the edge. Looking back on the incident, Willis would remember thinking to himself, "It's right over the A64. If this van goes over, it will kill the driver." The officer was aware of the risks of being in the street and knew that a vehicle could come on the hard shoulder and hit him. He held on for an estimated 15 minutes, a period during which he tried to reassure Dulson, who'd broken both of his legs in the impact. The officer told him that it was very important he refrained from any movement. Crews from West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service made their way to the scene and rescued Dulson during a 2-hour operation in which they used a winch to stabilize the van and pull it to safety. Dulson, whose mother later told a media outlet he was incredibly lucky to be alive, began recovering in a hospital in the aftermath and thanked his rescuers over Facebook. Willis maintained that he'd only been doing his job and was lauded by his colleagues in the rescue's wake, with one of them commenting on image of him from the scene saying, "Your Superman cape isn't in this photo though, must have come off in the fracas." Number 5. Anet Goodier. Corporal Anet Goodier of the Northeast Police Department in Cecil County, Maryland, was hailed as a hero in February of 2022 after she rescued a middle school student on a crosswalk near Northeast Middle School. CCTV footage of the incident would show Goodier helping a student cross the street during a rainy day while clad in an orange poncho. The officer motioned an approaching black sedan to stop, but the vehicle barreled towards her and the student, In a split second, Goodier grabbed the child by the shoulders and pushed her out of the way before taking the hit herself. The officer, a 13-year veteran of the force, was seen lying in the street, while the young girl, bystanders, and the sedan's female driver came to her aid. Goodier was fortunate to have only suffered minor injuries in the crash and was released from a hospital shortly thereafter. It remained unclear if the sedan's driver faced charges afterwards. Of those voicing their appreciation for the officer's actions was also Cecil County Public Schools, with a representative writing on Facebook, "We are forever grateful for the selfless response of this hero." Number 4. Justin Robbie. An officer from Avon and Somerset Police in England was nominated for a Bravery Award in the summer of 2023 after helping rescue 2 men from a burning building. On September the 25th of the previous year, a fire had broken out at a 16-foot-story building in Easton, Bristol. Local law enforcement received a call that a man later identified as father of 7, Abdul-Jabbar Oriakal, had already died because of the fire. The blaze, which was sparked by an electric bike, had broken out on the 16th floor. Oriakal, an Afghan refugee who'd been granted asylum after fleeing war in his country, fell to his death while trying to escape out of a window. PC Justin Robbie was among the first officers at the scene. As his colleagues secured the area, he ran into the building alongside an unnamed firefighter. After locating the fire on the last floor, Robbie, who wasn't wearing safety equipment, opened the door to the apartment of origin only to be pushed back by smoke and heat. He then heard shouts for help from 2 men clinging to a ledge on the outside of the building. As captured by his body cam, Robbie used his baton to smash the window and then assisted the firefighter in pulling the men inside. They were helped downstairs and survived the blaze. Robbie, who met Prime Minister Rishi Sunak during the awards ceremony in London, described his actions as a result of his training and as an automatic response. Number 3. Kayla Wallace. On the morning of May the 28th of 2023, South Carolina police officer Kayla Wallace pulled over a white Jeep for running a red light along US Highway 17 in Myrtle Beach. Wallace spoke to the female driver and her male passenger, noting that the former appeared to be distressed. The driver told Wallace that she felt like she was going to throw up. Then, when her passenger wasn't looking at her, silently and repeatedly mouthed to the officer, "Help me." Wallace removed the passenger, who was subsequently identified as 29-year-old Collins Bates, and took him to her patrol car before going back to speak to the driver. The unnamed woman frantically told her that Bates had just shot someone and that he then forced her to drive him around. Moments later, a "be on the lookout" alert came up on the officer's radio about a vehicle involved in a shooting, and the description matched that of the Jeep which Wallace had just stopped. It would emerge that Bates had shot someone outside a sports bar, and a pistol was discovered under his seat in the vehicle. He was arrested at the scene and charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime, in addition to unlawful possession of a pistol. Wallace, who had just 30 minutes left on her shift prior to initiating the traffic stop, was commended in a Facebook post by the North Myrtle Beach Police Department, who wrote, "Our department and our community is lucky to have Officer Wallace." Number 2. Justin Ferrari. Leading up to July of 2016, Florida woman Victoria Rosado, aged 26, was in the process of separating from her husband, Emmanuel. In late July, the woman placed a 911 call with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, reporting that Emmanuel had gone to her Deltona home, where her 3 children were present, and was acting crazy. She remained on the line for several minutes, saying that her ex was trying to break into the bedroom where she'd taken refuge. The dispatcher then heard a scream before the line went silent. When deputies reached the scene, they heard Emmanuel cry out, "You're going to die tonight." By that point, he'd already shot his wife in the leg. He then fired twice at the deputies, who responded with shots of their own, but no further gunshot injuries were reported. In the heat of the gun battle, Deputy Justin Ferrari made his way towards the home. As shown in footage captured by his body cam, Ferrari reached Victoria, who was bleeding near the door to her garage, and helped her to a neighbor's house. He then returned and also led her 3 children to safety. Emmanuel fled the home through a back door, whereupon he was taken into custody on 3 charges of attempted murder. In 2018, he was sentenced to life in prison. In the shooting's wake, Victoria was airlifted from the area and survived. A clip from Ferrari's body cam was later shared on the social media of the sheriff's office with the description, "When we say law enforcement officers run toward danger as others run away, this is what we're talking about." In 2018, Ferrari was recognized by the Florida Attorney General as a nominee for the state's Law Enforcement Officer of the Year award. Our episode about when things almost go very wrong from a while back is lined up for those viewers that are still longing for more. Stick around if you'd like. Number 1. Donald Thompson. At around 2 p.m. on Christmas Day 2013, LAPD officer Donald Thompson was driving to work on the southbound 405 freeway, just south of the 101 freeway, when he saw a station wagon on the northbound side crash into the divider. The vehicle burst into flames and Thompson, a bomb squad officer and a 26-year veteran of the force, jumped the divider and headed towards the wreck. The driver, described as being in his late 60s, was unconscious and still trapped behind the wheel as the car's interior was continuously consumed by smoke and flames. Recounting the incident, Thompson later told KCAL, "There was so much fire in it just gets into your head," adding, "It's just unbelievable how much heat there is with that fire." Thompson cut the driver's seatbelt and freed him, aided by 2 good Samaritans. They remained with the driver until the arrival of the Los Angeles Fire Department. By that point, the vehicle had been completely engulfed in flames and a thick plume of smoke surrounded it. The LAFD put out the blaze and Captain Cameron Kress subsequently spoke to the media to say if the LAPD officer had not taken the quick action to rescue that man, this would have been a fatality. The bomb squad officer definitely saved his life. The driver was taken to a local hospital with moderate injuries. Thompson himself suffered 1st and 2nd-degree burns to his hands and leg, along with smoke inhalation and abrasions, for which he received treatment. In the spring of 2016, he joined a dozen other police officers at the White House as they were commended with the Medal of Valor by then-President Barack Obama. Number 7. Joey Grundle. At around 1 p.m. on September the 27th of 2018, Wisconsin man Dean Hoffman broke into his ex-girlfriend's Grafton residence and attacked her. Upon forcing his way inside the home, Hoffman allegedly ripped the 57-year-old woman's phone away from her and attempted to drag her to the upstairs bedroom. According to the resulting criminal complaint, the man shoved the victim onto the floor, then pulled her hair, ripped her shirt, and continued dragging her up the steps. In an attempt to escape, the homeowner reportedly struck Hoffman in the groin, to which he responded by punching her in the face, giving her a black eye and a bloody nose. It was later detailed how Hoffman subsequently forced the woman upstairs and bound her hands and feet to the bed with a vacuum power cord, then shoved a towel in her mouth to ensure nobody would be able to hear her. The man kept her locked inside her own house for the next several hours, but eventually decided to order food from Domino's Pizza, a choice that unwittingly precipitated the victim's eventual escape. When the Domino's delivery driver, identified as Joey Grundle, arrived at the house, he noticed the woman's black eye and reportedly saw her mouth the words, "Help me." He promptly dialed 911, and local police were dispatched to the scene to investigate his claims. Hoffman was later arrested without incident, and he consequently faced charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, strangulation and suffocation, felony intimidation of a victim, and burglary of a building. The authorities credited Grundle's proactive quick thinking with potentially saving the victim's life. Number 6. Rachel Green. In May of 2022, doorbell camera footage surfaced online in which a woman from Kent, England, was shown saving her pet dog after it fell out of a second-story window. The woman, later identified as Rachel Green, had been conversing with a window fitter in her driveway when she suddenly looked up to find that her 6-year-old border collie, Florence, had somehow opened the window in the upstairs bathroom and was mere moments from falling to the pavement below. Green swiftly jumped into action and positioned herself on the ground to catch her dog in the event that it took the nearly 20-foot fall, which it ultimately did. However, because of the homeowner's quick thinking, she was able to catch Florence in her arms before she hit the ground. Green later told the Daily Mail that the animal was entirely unharmed during the incident, the video footage of which went viral after being posted to social media. Number 5. The Falkenberg Road jail attack. On February the 28th of 2017, CCTV cameras at the Falkenberg Road jail in Tampa, Florida, captured a brutal, unprovoked attack on a corrections officer identified only as Deputy D. Hernandez. As was shown in the viral recording of the incident, an inmate named as Keandre Zachary approached the guard from behind and wrapped a towel around his neck in an apparent attempt to strangle him. The prisoner dug his knee into 31-year-old Hernandez's back to keep him restrained, but the guard ultimately managed to contort his body out of the stranglehold. Following Zachary's initial assault, some of the 72 other inmates in the room at the time quickly sprung into action to help the deputy. Hernandez, with the help of several prisoners, was eventually able to subdue 22-year-old Zachary until additional guards arrived on the scene. The assailant, who was reportedly serving time in connection to a burglary conviction, was further charged with aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer and consequently moved to an isolation cell. According to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, Hernandez suffered a twisted ankle, bruised knee, and abrasions to his neck in the attack. Officials indicated that had the other inmates chosen not to help the officer, his injuries could have been far worse. Number 4. Sofhia Fado. Upon returning to their West Island residence after gathering with friends in February of 2022, Massachusetts woman Karen Herbert Sullivan and her husband placed an order for pizza from the regional restaurant chain Papa Gino's. Sullivan's partner fell asleep while they were waiting for the food, so she was the one who went outside to meet the delivery driver, identified as 26-year-old Sofhia Fado, when she arrived. Fado, who worked for the online food ordering company DoorDash, came upon Sullivan lying unconscious on the ground outside her home with blood dripping from her head. She immediately sprung into action, running into the house to alert the woman's husband before dialing 911. It later emerged that Fado, a New Bedford resident, had wanted to be an EMT before having children caused her to take a different career path. Nevertheless, she used the medical knowledge she'd gained in school to properly care for Sullivan while awaiting the arrival of emergency responders. The delivery driver used blankets and towels taken from inside the house to hold the injured woman's head and neck in place, which she later indicated was meant to prevent any further damage to her cervical spine that might eventually lead to paralysis. Although Sullivan was subsequently hospitalized for 3 weeks with a traumatic brain injury, she ultimately survived the ordeal largely because of Furtado's quick-thinking actions before the arrival of the EMTs. In the wake of the incident, the young woman was given an honorary plaque from the Fairhaven Police Department, a pin from Sullivan and her family, and a $1,000 scholarship from DoorDash, which was intended to help pay for her to go to medical school at some point in the future. Number 3. Brock Meister and Ryan Topper. After having dinner with friends on the night of January the 12th of 2018, Indiana resident Brock Meister set out for the Lake of the Woods, south of Bremen, to stay overnight at his grandparents' house. The 22-year-old was sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's vehicle when they suddenly drove over a patch of ice on the road. Due to the consequent loss of traction, the back of the car swung out and struck a ditch, causing the entire vehicle to tip over and roll onto the passenger side. Meister was then thrust sideways and his head violently struck the window, which shattered. The vehicle flipped upright again, and Meister's friend Ryan Topper, who was driving in a separate vehicle ahead of them, rushed to help. Having recently taken a CPR training course, Topper knew that moving Meister, who was unresponsive and covered in blood, would be potentially harmful to his condition. He instead cradled his injured friend's head and awaited the arrival of emergency responders. It subsequently emerged that the crash had caused Meister to suffer an internal decapitation, also known as atlanto-occipital dislocation, which has been shown by research to be fatal roughly 70% of the time. However, the young man ultimately survived the ordeal, in part due to Topper's quick-thinking heroics. 6 months later, after Meister had undergone an intensive hospital recovery process, his younger brother Colin was involved in a fiery jet ski accident at their family's lake house. Colin was thrown into the water after the craft abruptly exploded while he was attempting to turn it on. Meister immediately jumped into the water to help him, emulating the life-saving measures Topper had taken to rescue him only months earlier. Colin ultimately came away with a torn ACL and broken bones in his back and foot, but was otherwise fine, largely due to his brother's gallant efforts. Number 2. Jorel Puer. During a trip to Mexico to celebrate his 40th birthday, Virginia man Jorel Puer encountered a man who'd become unconscious while cliff diving in Tulum. As was detailed in subsequent reports, other people nearby had pulled the unresponsive individual out of the water when Puer and his friends got to the scene, at which point his face had taken on a bluish-purple color. The victim's wife and 5-year-old daughter was standing by his side, watching in helpless horror. Fortunately, Puer was a family care provider with Encircle, where he worked with people who had disabilities. As part of his medical training, he'd been given a CPR certification, but up until that point, he hadn't performed the emergency procedure out in the field. Despite his relative inexperience, he was able to successfully resuscitate the man back to consciousness. Number 1. Andrea Fuentes. American synchronized swimmer Anita Alvarez lost consciousness while competing in the World Aquatics Championships in Budapest, Hungary on June the 22nd of 2022. The 25-year-old professional athlete was taking part in the final round of the women's solo free event when she suddenly fainted and began sinking to the bottom of the pool. Speaking about the incident in a subsequent radio interview, Alvarez's coach, Andrea Fuentes, described how she'd realized something was wrong when the swimmer went down and didn't react, rather than swim to the surface after performing her routine. Fuentes revealed that she tried to get the attention of the pool's lifeguards to alert them to the situation, but they didn't see her. She thus took matters into her own hands and leapt into the water to rescue Alvarez herself. Upon reaching the unconscious young woman, Fuentes wrapped her arms around her and pulled her to the surface with the help of a male lifeguard who jumped in after she did. Alvarez reportedly wasn't breathing when she was extracted from the pool, but medical personnel at the scene were able to revive her and stabilize her condition. It was determined that the swimmer hadn't sustained any internal damage while she was submerged in the pool. Subsequent reports indicated that it was actually the second time Fuentes had saved Alvarez after she'd fainted during a competition, as she'd lost consciousness during the Olympics qualifying event in Barcelona the previous year. Thanks for watching. For a month, would you rather be a cop, only armed with a whistle, or a firefighter, but you can only use a water gun? Let us know in the comment section below.